Welcome back, True Seeker. Saturday, April 19th, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court paused the deportations the Trump administration is doing under the Alien Enemies Act. And I want to talk about the history of this and why the Supreme Court waited until early Saturday morning, April 19th, an infamous day in history. Again, this is the day the Revolutionary War began for America. Of course, it's associated with days like Waco, Oklahoma City, again, more recently in Canada, the events that took place there that got gun rights taken away. Look into April 19th in history, major events worldwide, and a big news story here, and no doubt a controversial one. So, again, SCOTUS pauses deportations under Alien Enemies Act. For you young people, SCOTUS stands for Supreme Court of the United States. And, of course, 3 of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court were installed in the time of Trump's administration: Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. And don't forget, Amy was the last one on the court, Catholic educated at Notre Dame. Nearly everybody on the court is Catholic and Jesuit educated, nearly the entire court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on the anniversary of the cornerstone being laid for Washington, D.C., September 18th, 2020, which was also Rosh Hashanah that year, the celebration of the Jewish New Year. She just happened to die that day to be replaced by the Catholic. This is important because today is a very important day to the Catholic Church in history. Today is the day that they recognized Ignatius of Loyola as their superior general, their military leader. And of course, a big part of the deportations under this Alien Enemies Act are the gangs out of Venezuela. The current superior general and leader of the Jesuit order for the Catholic Church is from Venezuela. That's Arturo Sosa. So look at this. I just want you to think about this history. The Alien Enemies Act came out of the Alien and Seditions Acts. There were 4 of them. 3 of them were removed. The only one that still remains is the Alien Enemies Act. But look at where these acts came out of. They were acts that came from Congress and signed by U.S. President John Adams in 1798 during a war with France. Now, where did the Jesuits come from? That's right, they came from France. Thus, the first Jesuit pope, Pope Francis. There were 4 acts. Here we are in the 4th month. The first 3 acts were about immigration. They set required time for an immigrant to become a citizen and allowed the president to send illegal immigrants back to their home country if their home country was at war with the United States. Now, obviously, we're not at war with Venezuela, but what this administration is arguing is that there's a drug war all throughout the Americas, and it's under the guise of the drug war that they're justifying the use of the Alien Enemies Act. Again, we fight so many wars: wars on drugs, wars on germs, wars with nations with brown people all across the world. This country is always at war. It was born in war. It was born out of a genocide. What's interesting, though, is if you look at this, the acts made many people dislike John Adams. For that reason, Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republican Party were able to defeat John Adams and the Federalist Party in the elections of 1800. 3 of the acts were repealed. The Alien Enemies Act, however, is still United States law. Jefferson and Adams, you know where they were united, those two? When this country was being founded, they both warned that the Jesuits, should they come out of suppression, they could subvert the United States of America. Again, the Jesuits, the Catholic Church, ran Europe at the time this country was being founded, and no doubt they run the U.S. today. That's why the capital was moved to their stronghold, and the Roman architecture's everywhere. It's really in your face if you know what's going on. It's also why April 19th is such a recurring date. But just think about it. Here we are, the Supreme Court, mostly all Jesuit educated if you look at them. It's not an exaggeration. Take a look at where they all went to school. Jesuit, Catholic educated. You're going to see the whole court. But yeah, they just got to get up early in the morning to pay tribute to history. Again, this whole thing comes out of a conflict with France where the Jesuits are from. April 19th, 1541. 484 years ago today, Ignatius of Loyola became the first superior general of the Jesuits. And with regards to all these rituals Trump's doing with 47, notice how France equals 47, like Trump equals 47. Again, if you're new here, there's 4 base ciphers of the English language, the alphabetic order, the reverse alphabetic order, and both orders with numerology applied. You're just taking the alphabetic order. A is 1 up to Z is 26. You're doing it in reverse. Z is 1 back to A is 26. Very simple mathematics. You're also doing it with numerology applied. These are the 4 base ciphers of the language. Just simple addition, adding up the letters as a mathematical equation to get the value of the word. You can see how Trump has the 25, 47, 88, just like the word judge has the 25, 47, 88. Donald Trump, who put in the most federal judges in a single term in U.S. history, including getting his first one in Gorsuch on April 7th. Trump back in 2025, for the record, the word felon's 25, the first felon president in 2025. It's all ritualism. It's all propaganda. It's all a script. It's all a show. It's all political theater. It's all meant to polarize and divide, because united we stand, divided we fall. And that's what all of these stories do every day. You know, a lot of people are going out to protest Donald Trump today. Don't forget, today is the 159th day of Arturo Sosa's age, and Donald Trump equals 159. A lot of protests today across the nation against Trump. People don't understand that Trump is a puppet on strings. These aren't really his policies. He's just the figurehead put out there, used by the cabal to create the polarization they want in society. Everyone who will be out there who's outraged today, what they really need is this information to understand who are the puppeteers who are really worth doing something about. There's a reason the Jesuits were suppressed by their own pope when this nation was founded. They are known for being corrupt and nasty and murderous and manipulative. Anyway, just look at the overlap, France, Judge Trump, how it just all comes together on this anniversary of Ignatius Loyola becoming the first superior general. The 4 acts were the Naturalization Act, the Alien Act, the Alien Enemies Act, and the Sedition Act. I want you to see the irony of this. The irony of this. So the Alien Enemies Act, the only part that still remains, it was passed July 6th, 1798. From the anniversary of its passing until today, the day that the Supreme Court temporarily pauses, exactly 41 weeks on the nose. Exactly 41. Alien 41. USA 41. Remember, 41's the 13th prime number. MS-13 is part of the deportations. This is the land of 13 stripes, 13 colonies, 13 years of public school education. Put a big asterisk next to it because it's really just indoctrination. Spend all this time in school, you never learn about how important the secret societies were to the founders, how many were Masons, how many were Jesuits, how the Jesuits were warned about. All of this is scrubbed from the history books. You don't learn a peep about Kabbalah or this practice of coding numbers into words, or that Masonry is based in Kabbalah. So you have no understanding of any of these things, where they really are elementary, and had you been taught about them in your 13 years of slave school, the average person, had they learned about this, then it would be important to them. But if they learn about it from a stranger on the internet, no matter how many days he's here straight proving his point every single day, because of the 13 years of indoctrination, for a lot of people, it just doesn't matter. There are people like my sister. My sister always says to me, Zach, if this was important, they would have taught this to us in school. She doesn't get it at all. Anyway. One other point that could be made about this, actually, is 7-6. That's George W. Bush's birthday, right? Obviously, he wasn't alive back in 1798. But 7-6-41. Do we see these numbers come together a lot? 76 and 41? Of course we do. George W. Bush's father was number 41. They were both presidents, number 41 and number 43. The powerful secret society they belonged to, which is modeled after the Illuminati, when the Illuminati was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt. Not to mention the Illuminati was founded with 13 families, May 1st, 1776. We're coming up on their birthday. But Skull and Bones, when you run the alphabetic order forward, Skull and Bones is 41. When you run it in reverse, it's 76. It's like, not this past March Madness, but the year before Yale, Skull and Bones. Yale was 322 years old. Skull and Bones is known as Order 322. Go back and look at what Yale did to Auburn upsetting them on March 22nd while the school was 322 years old. Go back and look at the box score. Auburn had 41 points in the first half, got stuck on 76 for the game, couldn't get off it. Yale came back and won, and we patted our pockets big time because we knew that was the lock of the century for a major upset in the tournament. Huge payout, plus 850. And again, that's the value of knowing this knowledge. You see how the game is rigged. Again, the sports, the politics, it's all rigged and scripted year in, year out. Again, this year we told you before the tournament began why Todd Golden in Trump's golden age would be winning the championship on 4-7, getting his 133rd career win when president, White House, and government all equal 133 the big way, 47 the small way. And don't forget, the first ever March Madness was the Catholic school Villanova over the Jesuit school Georgetown. Just to read about today's reporting, the Supreme Court early Saturday morning paused the deportation of immigrants potentially subject to the Alien Enemies Act, freezing action in a fast-developing case involving a group of immigrants in Texas who say the Trump administration was working to remove them. And if you have not been keeping up with all my work on Tren de Aragua and just all of this, it's all been synced with the Pope and Superior General. Every last one of these stories, Lake and Hope Riley, all of it. It's been a nonstop ritual. So now here we come to the Supreme Court getting involved on Ignatius of Loyola Day. It just couldn't be any more obvious. The court's brief order drew dissent from conservative Justice Samuel Alito, came in during Bush, and Clarence Thomas, came in during Papa Bush. Or hold on, I got to go back and revisit. Clarence, I think it was, God, was it Reagan? Maybe it was Reagan, actually. It was Reagan. Reagan and Papa Bush, so closely aligned. Of course, Clarence Thomas, also Jesuit educated. Attorneys for the Venezuelans at issue in the case filed an emergency appeal at the High Court on Friday, claiming they were at immediate risk of being removed from the country and had not been provided sufficient notice to challenge their deportation. So again, today's the anniversary of the first Superior General attaining his position. Venezuela's where the current Superior General's from. This is what prompted this to happen on this anniversary. Oh my goodness. How come all of the English-speaking people of the world have not caught on in the information age? The court's brief order on Saturday did not explain the court's reasoning. The court ordered the Trump administration to respond to the emergency appeal once a federal appeals court in Louisiana takes action in the case. In the meantime, the court said the government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Previously, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. told lawyers for the migrants in Texas who believe the Trump administration is about to swiftly deport them under the Alien Enemies Act that he did not have the power to pause the deportations even though he was concerned about the administration's actions. I am sympathetic to everything you're saying. I just don't think I have the power to do anything, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg told a lawyer for the migrants at an emergency hearing Friday night. Now remember, Judge James Boasberg equals 322, like Skull and Bones' order 322. And where did he go to school? He went to school at Yale. Again, all of these things connect because Skull and Bones was modeled after the Illuminati. The Illuminati was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, intersecting secret societies. And keep in mind, the Illuminati was founded right before the American Revolution and in the time of the Jesuit suppression. So in the time the Jesuits are supposed to be on lockdown, a Jesuit forms the Illuminati. Just think about it, with 13 families. Before announcing his decision, and by the way, if you missed last night's video on James Boasberg, just his name alone, James Boasberg, equals 45. You know, just like Juan Merchan, you know, numerous judges who've had battles with Trump have had the 45 name. Of course, Trump was priorly number 45. The Jesuit acronym IHS is 45. His name in reverse, 81. James Boasberg, 81 in reverse, like ritual, like President Trump, and also like Alien Enemies Act. Perfect characters for the perfect storyline, all Kabbalistically encoded. Again, that's where this whole thing of letters and numbers comes from. Kabbalah. It's a belief system, a spiritual belief system about how God operates. These people are playing God. Before announcing his decision not to get involved, Boasberg pressed an attorney for the administration on whether it will move forward with the deportations Friday night or Saturday. Justice Department Attorney Drew Ensign told Boasberg that while no fights are planned, the Department of Homeland Security said it reserves the right to remove the migrants on Saturday. Remember, the Department of Homeland Security came out on 9/11, and the sitting president was a Skull and Bones member. Jesuit symbolism all over that ritual. It all pointed back to the Vatican. Keep in mind, in Jewish gematria, Vatican Hill equals 911. The migrants' lawyers also requested intervention by the Fifth U.S. Court of Appeals, which oversees appeals coming out of Texas. It's hard for me to say I should inject myself into this controversy given where the issue stands in the Fifth Circuit and Supreme Court, Boasberg said Friday. The migrants' lawyers counsel at the American Civil Liberties Union and Democracy Forward turned to Boasberg for emergency relief in the initial case they brought in his court challenging President Donald Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act, a sweeping 18th century wartime authority. They did this on the 18th of the month last night with Boasberg, right? And now the next day, Ola Day, boom. Saturday's decision marks the second time Trump's use of authority has landed at the Supreme Court. Last week, the court permitted Trump to use the authority, but said migrants being removed under it needed to receive notice that they are subject to the act and have an opportunity to have their removal reviewed by the federal court where they are being detained. The justices also ruled that migrants could only challenge their deportations in court districts containing the facilities where they're being detained. The current dispute reflects how aggressively the administration is willing to act to continue deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, which allows the government to bypass some of the protocols and the immigration statutes that typically guide the process for removing migrants in the U.S. illegally. We hear men are being requested to change clothes, the migrants' attorney said Friday, as he unsuccessfully pleaded with Boasberg to issue even a very brief pause in the administration's plans. All right, we'll leave it there for now, Truth Seeker. Again, just another presentation of what's really going on with our government and what really controls it. And remember, the Jesuits have been warned about since the time the country was founded. The American Civil War, the sitting president Lincoln blamed the war on the Jesuits. That's kept out of our history books. We always learn about John Wilkes Booth, but we don't learn about John Surratt, the Jesuit who was part of the assassination, who escaped, and his mother was executed because the Vatican protected him from the U.S. government. Long history of warnings about the Jesuits and their influence and control in America, and somehow in 13 years of public education, you don't hear a single peep about it. And that should tell you all you need to know, too. And then plus what we put out each day, revealing what's really going on, the constant tributes to history in a land where we all know the phrase, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. All roads lead to Rome. Your days are numbered. Again, we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. We need more people to appreciate it. We need more people to support it because this kind of stuff needs to stop. It does have an impact on our life, the games that are being played with us. Think about how expensive all these bills are. Think about how expensive it is to funnel people in and then use taxpayer dollars to ship them out. Think about it. These games cost us a lot of money. All of us pay a lot of taxes, a high percentage in taxes. Our money is used to play games that are meant to keep us divided and fighting over political parties. And neither of them tell you the truth about anything. You might like the rhetoric better from this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle, but at the end of the day, it's two wings of the same bird. And again, start to look at where a lot of these people in Congress and the Senate went to school. You're going to see the same thing as the Supreme Court. Catholic and Jesuit educated overwhelmingly. And remember, there's only 27 Jesuit universities in the nation and a nation of thousands of universities. So a very small percentage, yet the majority of people in federal government, and keep in mind the capital cities where the Jesuits set up camp. First recognized president in the his storybook is George Washington, who became president a few months after Georgetown opened its doors, the first Jesuit university. All right, we'll leave it there for now, True Seeker. And until next time.